I believe that doing a full cycle, the same conductor, the same musicians, we immerse ourselves in the syntax, you know, the vocabulary of the composer. And of course, we apply the same, it's like putting the same glasses and looking at the music all at once with fresh eyes and ears. With the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, I often did cycles. This is kind of what makes us special together as a chemistry. A cycle of Mozart's late operas here in Baden-Baden, a cycle of Schumann symphonies, a cycle of Mendelssohn symphonies, all for Deutsche Grammophon. And so the cycle of cycles is, of course, the 9 Beethoven symphonies, and this is just unique to be able to share our passion for Beethoven together. In Chamber Orchestra of Europe, there's a word chamber, which means chamber musician, but making chamber music at large is at the core of who I am as a conductor. This is how I treat opera, this is how I treat big symphony orchestras, but then when I come to the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, it's definitely even more in the DNA of the group, to be able to exchange ideas, to be able to always get rid of preconceived ideas, preconceptions. This is how it was founded, you know, in the early 1980s. This is the spirit with which Claudio Abbado worked with them. This is a spirit with which Nicolas Arnoncourt worked with them. And of course, I'm the very fortunate inheritant of this wonderful tradition, and the spirit is quite unique in the world. I feel that Beethoven's strength on a purely musical level is rhythm. It's the repetition of the motivic writing, but that's, of course, it's the architecture, of course it's all this, but it's first and foremost how the motricity, you know, how the movement is developing and relentless. If it's the Fifth Symphony, all those little corona, fermata, pause that we have, pa 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 pa, pa 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 pa, they're just ways to relentlessly start again the musical speech. When is the Ninth Symphony, pa-pam, pa-pam, pa-pa-pam, there is a tribute to even Baroque rhythm there, which is Beethoven's tribute to the past, to this knowing the music history and where he arrived in it. So I found myself with the Chamber Orchestra of Europe very often in the cycle, asking them never to lose the pulse, never to lose the dance quality. And when I say dance, I don't mean ballet, I don't mean dance to be something lighter, but the music is already very vertical. It has a lot of pillars, a lot of columns. I think it's up to the musicians and the conductor to not to stop with this verticality and keep an horizontal flow. And we don't have for this very long lines or long melodies. You know, only maybe in the Ninth Symphony we get this famous Freude, you know, and this is a long. Everything before it is of very short. So yeah, we had to really think about this. And it's a question, of course, very interestingly, of looking at the famous metronome markings of Beethoven. And now, there's several opinions about this, but me as a conductor, I want to look at those and have an idea where he wants to go and the relationship between the movements. And this is so important to not only about speed and about technique, but how, for example, in the Eroica, if we are keeping up with the Beethoven's really fast tempi, the music becomes all of a sudden brighter. Dare I say lighter, but lighter in the best possible way, like the sunshine and like the humanity that is also very characteristic of Beethoven. So instead of finding the depth of Beethoven by slowing down and by getting the roots a bit too much, we find the depth of Beethoven by respecting is idea of flow and of speed. And that maybe has been the best discovery for me, for all of us in this cycle. One of the great characteristics of Baden-Baden is that the city is quite small and it's next to nature. For us musicians, this is so important that when we come to the rehearsal, when we go away, when we have some time off, when we go have lunch, there's a feeling that we are in a small place and we can focus on the music and take our mind in probably a closer place that the composers, had when they were here. And there were so many composers in Baden-Baden as well. And one can get inspired. I get inspired by the trees. I get inspired by this. It's easier for me to focus on the music, but also acoustically. I have to say the Festspielhaus is really big. We all know it's one of the largest houses in Europe. But the great quality of this stage is its honesty, its truth. It's not dry, it's not overly reverberant, it's not loud, it's not soft, it's just true. So when we are recording a cycle like this, every musical idea we have is reflected in the acoustics. We don't have to play extra short because otherwise it becomes too, or the opposite too. We don't have to play extra long because it's too dry. So it's just real. And I think that's what every musician wants, is to be able to suggest and have the reality and the mirror of every musical intention. And hopefully that will also come through in the recording. I believe in live recordings. I've always believed in them. Because with such an orchestra as the COE, there is an abandon and an extra dose of intensity that is not possible to capture in a studio. The studio has its beauties, but no matter what, we are communicators as musicians. We need to feel it, the ears of our fellow humans to respond to and to exchange and to have these moments like after our Fifth Symphony where there was a silence. People were in shock and they just did not applaud. And after a few seconds, they did, of course, and erupted. And this is truly special. But of course, the biggest challenge is, especially in these symphonies, it's for the mind, but it's purely physical also, especially for the strings, but also the winds. I mean, a symphony like the Ninth is, as one of our wind players was telling me, it's like a 5-set match of tennis, where it's just so long. You need to keep your stamina, your energy, and for the strings, especially the second violins and the violas, they have all the rhythmic vitality of Beethoven on their shoulders. And so that is also very difficult, but I believe that the challenge makes also the great musical result. Beethoven's music especially, Beethoven requires to be aware of the effort. You need, when you listen to a symphony of Beethoven, to be aware that for the group of humans who have given all the blood and tears and sweat, it's like the metaphor for the human being just rising up on the mountain and then enjoying to be at the top because it has done the hike before, So it is challenging and very rewarding at the same time. A conductor has to be the calmest person in the room, because at the end of the day, I'm not making any sounds. I'm not the one having the weight of all the notes to be played, of all the things that we want to be perfect. My responsibility is create conditions so that the musicians can be free and happy to play and not too stressed. So Of course, sometimes I'm stressed, but I have to keep my calm because I know that this is how people are going to give their best, is if they see me smiling and be nice. But I have, in order to do this, maybe two little tips. I need to take care of myself very much in terms of sleeping well, eating well, keeping a lot of time so that I can reflect and be calm. And the other tip is being well surrounded. I have my family with me, my friends, my partner, and that's very important to be surrounded so I can really give my best and not making everyone else around me stressed. The key word of the pairing of the symphonies was contrast, so or opposites. The most obvious one, I think, is the Second Symphony and the Third Symphony. So between 2 and 3, there's a world of difference. There's the size, the length of the Third Symphony is more than double the second, you know, and that is such a big break in history from the structural point of view, and also harmonically. There's some dissonances in the third, which, you know, in the second would have been unthinkable. 1 and 9 is the opposites, is how the journey began and how it ended, and it's to appreciate, you know, everything that's been going in between. 6 and 7 are also very complementary because 6 is all about nature, and 7 is all about, I feel, humans taking nature and making it their own somehow. And this has been guiding 4 and 5 also, this contrast. So this has been guiding my choices. I think there's something to be said about, of course, going in order, but I think it's more interesting for the listener and for the audience to be able to understand those contrasts. I don't know any other composer who has had more influence in the musical history and also beyond. I think it's all about the philosophy, it's the influence in the social science, it's influence almost in the scientific, you know, even in the nature and the environment, and the influence in humanitarian philosophy. And he, of course, was at the center, of course, of a lot of influences himself. You know, Mozart and Haydn, and of course Bach a lot, and Handel influenced him a lot. But then everybody after Beethoven was either following Beethoven or reacting against Beethoven. But to this day, I think everyone has a connection. But the Fifth Symphony, I mean, even if I were to tell you that maybe my favorite is Eroica, number 3, there's nothing like it in the music history. How can you take 4 notes and make them so special that everybody, every human being knows, I've heard these notes. It's something that's beyond any understanding. It's beyond the boundaries of just music and culture. It's part of the common wealth of our planet Earth. You know, Baden-Baden has been part of my musical life regularly, almost always at this time of year, so early in the summer, since 2010. First with those Mozart series with COE, and now this is kind of a transformation of that time. This Beethoven cycle with Chamber Orchestra of Europe, I would like it to become in the future, we would like it to become an annual presence where we can go with more cycles, maybe a Brahms cycle, maybe Mozart, maybe Schubert, and add to those cycles maybe more of what I've been doing this year with Lieder Abend with Joyce Di Donato. So I could do chamber music, sit at the piano with some members of the orchestra, have special guests, and have, in a way, a certain Yannick time in Baden-Baden every season to keep together, you know, exploring with the great audience here more of the great masters of music. I have to say, what is still the most special to me is just right in front of where Clara Schumann and Brahms have their sculptures. There's this beautiful meadow. The light there, the chiaroscuro, you know, is unlike anywhere else in the world. When I sit there and I'm near the statues, I imagine all of what romantic music means and how the Schwarzwald means, and it's still my favorite spot. It's more like a sanctuary for me, or a shrine, you know, somewhere you go to feel connected with why I am an artist.